Hello everybody, welcome to another Spanish lesson. Today we're going to be following up to our first commands video, which was about affirmative to commands, or affirmative informal commands, which is telling somebody to yes, do something in the informal or to sense or conjugation. Today we are going to be telling somebody to not do something informally. So it's somebody that you speak to informally, and you're telling somebody not to do something. Just to review, commands are also called the imperative verb tense. We have 4 types of commands that you're going to use most of the time. There's other types of commands, but this one is going to cover you most of the time, and we'll worry about the other ones when we get through all of these. Informal affirmative, telling somebody yes, do something. Informal negative, telling somebody do not do something. Formal affirmative, so this is the usted conjugation, telling somebody formally to yes, do something. And formal negative, how to tell somebody in the formal sense or respectfully not to do something. Okay. So the rules for creating an informal negative command are to start with no or nunca. So nunca means never, but it's the equivalent of in English when you say don't do that. It's the equivalent of the word don't. So you say don't and then you conjugate the verb. So here you're going to say no and then the correct conjugation of the verb. So when you go to conjugate the verb, you're going to use the long and short of it is you are going to end up using the second person present subjunctive form of the verb. Now, don't panic. The subjunctive verb tense is a tense just like the present tense, the past tense, the future tense. It is a verb tense that does not exist in English. And I know that sounds like super crazy, but it's used in certain scenarios, and we'll make a separate video about what the subjunctive tense is and when to use it. But what you're going to want to know for the purpose of creating an informal negative command is that the AR ending of the verb becomes ES. So for AR verbs, the ending will become ES, which is weird, right? Because usually it's AS or something along those lines. But here, for the subjunctive tense, AR becomes ES. And ER and IR endings both become AS. So it's confusing and it's weird, right? It's like these endings switched back and forth. So that's what happens in the subjunctive tense. Again, don't worry, as you increase your exposure to Spanish, this is going to become very intuitive, even though it sounds like super crazy probably the first time you hear it. And the good news is it's also probably going to clear up some confusions you've had, maybe listening to song lyrics or maybe reading books. You might be like, why did the ending switch? Like, correr is an ER verb. Like, why does it say corras with an AS? Is that a different verb? No, it's not. It's a different tense. So don't be confused. All right. And when you're creating an informal negative command, the pronoun goes before the verb. Also, we'll go back to this later, but for irregular verbs, it's just going to be the exact same as the second person present subjunctive form of the verb. So if you go to conjugation.org, that website that I always suggest for looking up verbs in Spanish and seeing if they're regular or irregular, you're going to look at where it says subjunctive, and then that's the tense that you're going to look at. So because we're doing informal negative to commands, you are always going to look at the subjunctive column, and you're going to look at the second person or do conjugation, and that's going to tell you the conjugated form of the verb, regular or irregular, that you need to use. Okay, so let's go through some examples of regular verbs. So remember, all you need to do is say no, then use the subjunctive second person tense, present tense, and that's how you say don't do something informally in Spanish. Okay, let's look at correr. So correr is an ER verb. The first thing I'm going to do is say no, like don't in English. No, and then the verb. How do I conjugate the verb? Well, this is an ER verb. So the subjunctive form is going to change to an AR ending, and we're doing the to form. So it's going to be corras, AS. So no corras, don't run. No corras en la escuela. Don't run in the school. Next, tomar. Okay, we have an AR verb here. So in the subjunctive form, that AR is going to become an ES. So we start with no. No tomes demasiado. Okay, so we know that tomar means to drink, and we know that it can often imply alcohol. So no tomes, don't drink. Demasiado means too much. So no tomes demasiado, don't drink too much. 3. Mentir. Mentir means to lie. So, mentir, you may know this verb. I don't remember if we've specifically done this verb, but this is one verb that the stem will change when it's conjugated. So it is irregular, but it's one of the ones that follow a pattern. So it's kind of predictable, and it has a family of verbs that go through a similar change when they're conjugated. This en will become ie. I did not include this in the irregular verbs because this has a family of patterns that the en becomes an ien, and it's very predictable, unlike the irregular verbs that we're going to go over, which are completely or almost completely unpredictable. Okay, so this is going to become, this ir is going to become an as, and the en is going to become ien. So mientas. So no, and then we have a pronoun here. We're saying don't lie to me. So no, the pronoun is going to go in front of the conjugated verb and after the no. So no me mientas. Don't lie to me. Okay, so that was a really long explanation for a really simple sentence. It's okay. Mentir becomes mient for the stem. The ir becomes as because we're doing the subjunctive tense. Mientas. So that's what we're going to use for the conjugated form. Pronoun goes before the verb. You start with a no. No me mientas. Don't lie to me. Engañar. Engañar means to trick or fool or deceive. It can also mean to cheat. You can say you cheated at a game, you cheated on me, or you can just say you tricked somebody. So engañar. It looks confusing and it looks scary with that ñ, but it's actually a regular verb. So in order to conjugate this, how are we going to do that? Well, we're doing the subjunctive, so that AR is going to become an ES, and we're going to start with no. No engañes a tus amigos. Don't fool your friends. Don't trick your friends. Don't deceive your friends. No engañes a tus amigos. Okay. Leer. Leer means to read. This also looks pretty weird because it has that double E in the middle, but that ER changes like a regular verb. So we have an ER verb. We're going to start with no. Then how are we going to conjugate this? That ER is going to become an AS. So no leas mi diario. Diario is diary, so don't read my diary. No leas mi diario. Okay, so what are some irregular negative to commands? If a verb is irregular in the present subjunctive, use that form. Okay, so let's go over some common irregular subjunctive verbs. You might notice that these are a lot of the same verbs as the ones that have irregular affirmative commands. So it's going to become really easy to be intuitive about how to use these verbs because the ones that are irregular tend to be irregular in multiple tenses, not just one. Okay, so first, also I have put these conjugated in the second person since this is what you're going to need for this lesson on how to make negative to commands. But obviously, since these have irregular subjunctive forms, there's a whole list of like yo, tú, él, ustedes, nosotros. But here I've just put the second person. So decir becomes digas. Decir means to say, digas. Ir becomes vayas. Ir means to go. Haber becomes hayas. Haber is equivalent to like in English when you say to have, but in the sense that you use that word to say that something has been done. So I have done this. You have done that. It is conjugated for me and for you. I have done this. You have done this. He has done this. But then afterwards, there's another verb. I have gone to the store. He has gone to the store. It's it helps you express certain tenses. It's not really going to end up being too useful for negative commands, but I think a irregular subjunctive list would be incomplete without it. Saber becomes sepas. And this one also is not too useful for you here because you might say, like, don't know that. Like, that's not like, how can you tell somebody not to know something? Unless you're joking around. But I want your knowledge to be complete. So, saber, subjunctive tense is irregular. It becomes sepas in the second person. 5, ser becomes seas. 6, estar becomes estes. Now, you might notice that AR did switch to ES here, so that looks correct actually, but the thing that makes it irregular is actually the accent over the E. Just like the present tense actually. If you remember that, a lot of the forms have an accent over the A, so even though it's so close to being regular, the thing that makes it irregular is just that little accent there. 7, salir means to go out. Salgas, it becomes salgas with a GAS at the end. You're going to notice a lot of these have a GAS. Tener becomes tengas. Tener means to have. Poner becomes pongas. Poner means to put something somewhere. Hacer becomes hagas. Hacer means to make or to do. All right, now let's go over some examples of irregular negative do commands. I'm just going to go over the most common ones, I think, from that last list. And that's not all inclusive, by the way. Those are just the ones that I think you're going to run into the most of the time based on my experience. Like I said, if you're not sure if a verb is regular or irregular, I highly recommend just going over to conjugation.org and you type in any Spanish verb and it'll give you an entire table of all the different conjugations. Anything that's irregular will appear in red. But don't worry, because that's all going to become second nature to you once you're exposed to enough. But it's important to go over the grammar so that you're not confused when you're exposed to it, and so that you at least have the rules in the back of your mind when you're learning how to speak and say things that you want to say. Okay, so let's go over some examples. 1, decir. So we know that decir becomes digas, so we're going to start with a no. And then here we're saying don't tell me, so the pronoun goes before the verb. No me digas, don't tell me, que me amas, that you love me. So I wanted to go with an example here that you're going to hear in songs and stuff like that, or on soap operas. So if somebody's has betrayed you somehow and then they're like, I love you, you can say, don't say that to me. You can't say that to me after having done this to me. So no me digas, don't tell me that you love me. No me digas que me amas. You're going to hear that all the time. 2, ir. So we know that ir is irregular. It's going to become vayas here. No te vayas. So irse, we know that's irse means to go, to leave. It's oh my god, I can't believe I'm drawing a blank. Reflexive. So no te vayas. So you're saying irse means to leave. No te vayas. Don't leave. You can use this in any context that you would in English. If your mom's going to work, a little kid might say, oh, don't leave, no te vayas. Or if, you're having a really nice date and then somebody says, oh, it's time for me to go, you might say, no te vayas. It just means don't leave. You can use it anywhere. So ser, we know it's going to become seas. We're going to start with a no. No seas malo. Don't be mean. Malo means bad. It can also mean mean. So no seas malo. So if your friend's making fun of your other friend, tell him no seas malo. Don't be mean. Tener, we know it's going to become tengas. No tengas miedo. Miedo means fear. So no tengas miedo means don't be afraid. This is also something you'll hear pretty common in songs, in TV shows, in books. Don't be afraid. No tengas miedo. Poner. We know that's going to become we know it's going to become pongas. Sorry, no pongas queso en mi hamburguesa. Queso means cheese. Hamburguesa is hamburger. You might be able to guess. So no pongas. Don't put queso, cheese, en mi hamburguesa. Don't put cheese on my hamburger. Listen, I don't know who doesn't want cheese on their hamburger, but maybe this person's on a diet. Okay. Hacer, we know is going to become hagas. So we're going to use a pronoun here. It's going to go before the verb. No me hagas esto. So this means, esto means this or that. So no me hagas, we know it's saying don't do something to me. And what is it saying not to do to me? Esto. Esto just means this. So this literally translates to don't do this to me. So you can use this in basically any context that you would in English. If you think somebody's lying to you or manipulating to you, or there's some kind of situation going on, no me hagas esto, don't do this to me. Or if somebody's about to break up with you, you can say no me hagas esto, don't do this to me. You're going to hear it on TV, you'll hear it in songs. So that's a pretty common example too. So, just to review, today we talked about how to make informal negative commands in Spanish. So how to tell somebody not to do something in an informal way. So it's your friend, it's somebody that you know well, or it's somebody younger than you. And this is super, I mean, when you first saw the title, you might have asked yourself, when am I going to need to do this? I don't really boss people around. But as you can see, actually, these are probably some really useful phrases that you might come across. No te vayas, don't leave. No me digas, don't tell me. Or for decir, don't tell somebody else something. This is a secret. No le digas a él, whatever. Don't tell him whatever. Don't tell anybody whatever. No le digas a nadie. So you have to put that pronoun there. No le digas a nadie. Don't tell anybody. Yeah, don't put cheese on my hamburger. It's you need to know how to order things if you're a vegan or something. So actually this lesson is very useful. But that's it for today. Look, we only went through a few examples, and this video is already 16 minutes long, but I hope it's been really helpful to you. And if you have any questions, post them in the comments, and I'll see you guys again for the next commands video.